Imagine trying to find your toothbrush after a massive move, but like every single box in your entire house is an identical blank cardboard cube.
Oh, that sounds absolutely awful.
Right. I mean, you have absolutely no idea what's in any of them until you slice the tape and literally dig through the packing peanuts.
Yeah, that infuriating blind scavenger hunt, that is exactly what the internet looked like to search engines and screen readers before we finally fixed its invisible skeleton.
Exactly. So, welcome to our deep dive. Whether you're a budding developer, just starting to get your hands dirty with code, or maybe you're just someone who uses the internet every single day and is insanely curious about the hidden machinery making it all work, you are in the right place.
Definitely. Today, we're pulling from some fantastic source notes covering wireframes and semantic HTML.
And our mission for this deep dive is super clear. We are going to decode the hidden architecture of the web.
Right, because we're looking at that crucial planning and structuring phase. The stuff that happens long before a single line of actual design code gets written.
It's the underlying foundation holding up literally every app, blog, and storefront you interact with online.
Yeah, and you might be sitting there thinking, why should I care about the invisible skeleton? I just want the websites I use to look good and load fast.
Which is fair. But understanding this underlying structure, well, it fundamentally changes how you see the digital world. You stop just looking at colors and images, and you start appreciating how information is meticulously organized.
Not just for us humans clicking our mice,
No.
but for the machines and the algorithms operating furiously behind the scenes. It completely flips your perspective on what a web page actually is.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can even talk about the code, we really have to talk about the plan. You wouldn't pour a concrete foundation for a house without a blueprint, right?
No, you'd end up with a total disaster. And our sources make this really vital distinction right off the bat between two types of planning. There's a difference between a sitemap and a wireframe. A sitemap is essentially a giant structural tree. It's the macro view. It shows you what pages exist on the entire website and how they connect to each other. So your home page branches out to your About page, your services page, and your contact page.
Oh, so it's the 10,000-foot view. You're flying over the terrain, just seeing the major landmarks.
Exactly. But a wireframe, which is actually our main focus today, that zooms all the way in, a wireframe focuses entirely on just one single page. It is the granular layout blueprint for that specific piece of real estate.
Yeah, the notes have this incredibly striking visual to represent this. It's labeled the Project Nova City Master Plan. It looks like this glowing blue sci-fi architectural hologram.
I love that graphic.
It's so cool. You can clearly see a residential sector, a branching off from a central transportation hub, and like way off on the outer edge, there's this designated hydroponic farm.
It perfectly captures the intent of wireframing.
It really does, because a wireframe is exactly like that sci-fi city blueprint. It maps out where the residential sector sits versus the transportation hub, but it absolutely does not tell you what color the apartment buildings are going to be painted.
Right, or what kind of glass they're putting in the windows. It just establishes the zones.
Yeah, and establishing zones without getting bogged down in details, that's the fundamental rule here.
Exactly. A proper wireframe should show labeled boxes, period. You have a box at the top labeled header, a horizontal box under it for navigation.
Then a massive box taking up most of the screen for main content, right?
Yes, and maybe a narrow box on the right for a sidebar and a footer at the bottom. The sources really emphasize what a wireframe explicitly excludes, too.
Right, no styling.
No styling, no colors, no custom fonts, no high-resolution images, just stark, grayscale boxes with simple text labels.
It answers one single, vital question. Where does each piece of content go?
Exactly. You're deciding on the structural hierarchy of the information before you get distracted by aesthetics. Because, honestly, if you start debating whether a button should be forest green or neon blue...
You've completely stopped thinking about whether that button even belongs on the page.
Exactly.
But, okay, let me push back on this for a second.
Okay.
Let's say I'm building my own portfolio website. I already know what I want in my head. I know I want my headshot here, my bio there, and the menu over on the left.
Sure.
Isn't sitting down to meticulously draw gray boxes on a screen just slowing me down? I just want to open my code editor and get straight to the building part.
It's the most common temptation for beginners. I mean, everybody wants to jump right in. But professional developers almost never skip this step. Yeah. And the reason comes down to catching layout problems when they are cheap to fix, rather than when they're wildly expensive to fix.
Oh, you're talking about the time cost of bad code.
Right. Our sources describe this absolute nightmare scenario, this massive tangle of red spaghetti code that happens when you just dive in blind. when you just start writing HTML without a visual plan, you inevitably make structural mistakes. You might accidentally nest your main navigation inside your header in a way that breaks when the screen shrinks.
Oh, or you mix up the nesting of your main content and your sidebar.
Exactly. And by the time you open it in a browser and realize the layout is completely broken,
Yeah.
untangling that deeply nested interdependent code is a nightmare.
Right, compared to a wireframe where if you realize your sidebar is on the wrong side, you just click the gray box and drag it to the other side of the screen.
It takes 2 seconds. Planning first guarantees a clean, maintainable structure when you finally start typing.
Okay, so we've mapped out our sci-fi city. We have our clean grayscale wireframe. Once that visual plan is locked in, how do we actually translate those drawn boxes into code that a browser can actually understand?
Which brings us to the absolute core of today's deep dive, semantic HTML.
Semantic HTML.
To really grasp this, we have to look at how the web has evolved. First, let's just define the word semantic. It simply means meaningful or relating to meaning in language or logic.
Okay.
So when we talk about semantic code, we mean that the HTML tag itself should actively describe what the content is, not just how it's supposed to look on a monitor.
Yeah, the sources show this fascinating before and after of how developers used to build sites in the early 2000s versus how we do it now.
It was the Wild West back then.
It really was. The old way relied almost entirely on one single generic tag, the div tag.
Div is short for division, right?
Yeah, it's just a generic container. So you would look at the code of a major website and just see div id equals header, div class equals nav, div class equals content. It was literally just divs all the way down.
The developer community calls that div soup.
Piff soup.
Yeah, it's just a murky bowl of identical, flavorless containers.
Which brings me back to the cardboard boxes I mentioned earlier. Using only div tags is exactly like packing all your worldly possessions into identical, unlabeled cardboard boxes for a move. Such a good analogy.
Right. I mean, sure, structurally they hold your stuff perfectly fine. The boxes stack nicely in the moving truck. But when you get to the new house and you're exhausted and just want to brush your teeth, good luck finding your toothbrush.
Because every single box looks exactly the same from the outside.
Exactly. You have to physically open and inspect the contents of every single one to know what's inside.
It's perfect because a div tag inherently says absolutely nothing about its contents to the browser. It's an empty, meaningless container.
Right.
So the modern solution is to use specific semantic tags that were actually derived directly from those common wireframe zones we just mapped out.
So instead of a generic box, it's like having a clear plastic bin labeled kitchen supplies or a wardrobe box explicitly designed for hanging clothes.
Exactly. Our sources introduce 7 core semantic tags that have basically replaced all those generic divs. Let's walk through them, thinking about moving from the top of a web page to the bottom.
Okay, let's do it. We have the header tag, which holds introductory content like your logo and site title. Below that, we have nav, specifically for your major navigation links.
Makes sense.
Then we have the main tag. This one is crucial. It holds the primary, unique content of the page. And the rules actually state there should only be one main tag per page.
Well, yeah, you don't have 2 main events at a concert. There's only one main act.
Precisely. Inside or alongside that, we have article and section, which are used for grouping content. We'll dig into the specific differences between those two in a moment because they can be tricky.
For sure.
We also have the aside tag for related but separate content. Think of like a sidebar, a pull quote, or a box with related links.
Okay.
And finally, sitting at the bottom, we have the footer tag for closing content like copyrights, legal disclaimers, and social media links.
So if I'm building my site today, instead of typing div id equals footer and just hoping someone understands what I mean, I just literally type footer.
What's fascinating here is that if you go into an old website and switch out all those generic divs for these modern semantic tags, it does not change how the page looks to the naked eye.
Wait, really?
Yeah, the visual output on the monitor remains 100% identical.
Yeah.
What changes completely is how the page is understood by the systems interpreting it.
And that's the million-dollar question. If semantic HTML doesn't change the visual output at all, why even go through the trouble?
Right.
Like if the user sitting at their laptop just sees the exact same website either way, why did the entire web development industry fundamentally change how we code?
It's a critical question. And our sources outline 3 massive reasons why relying on div soup is just a terrible practice today.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first, and arguably the most important from a human perspective, is accessibility. Think about visually impaired users who rely on screen reading software to browse the internet.
Oh, right. Because the software actually reads the underlying HTML code aloud to them, translating the code into spoken audio?
Yes. Now imagine that software hitting a page built entirely out of divs. It's incredibly frustrating. The software literally just encounters container after container without any context. It just says group, 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 or div, div, div.
Oh, wow. Going back to our moving manifest, it's like having someone read your inventory list to you, and instead of saying books, dishes, clothes, they just monotonously say box, box, box.
Exactly. It gives you zero spatial awareness of where you are in the house. The user has no idea where the menu ends, where the main article begins, or if they're just listening to a sidebar full of advertisements.
That sounds awful.
But with Semantic HTML, the software interacts with the tags directly. The screen reader can announce banner header, navigation main menu, main region, article.
So the user can actually understand the topology of the page.
Even better, they can use keyboard shortcuts to skip the repetitive navigation and jump straight to the main tag. Semantic HTML transforms an infuriating, unusable page into a fully accessible, navigable experience.
I mean, that alone makes it a non-negotiable requirement in my book. But then there's the second major benefit the sources highlight, which is SEO, search engine optimization.
Yes, this is where we stop talking to humans and start talking to machines. Search engines like Google operate by sending out automated bots, or spiders, to constantly crawl your web page, read the code, and figure out what the page is actually about so they can rank it in search results.
Right.
If Google's bot hits a wall of identical divs, it has to use a bunch of complex guesswork to figure out what part of the page is the valuable content and what part is just the footer with the privacy policy.
It's making an educated guess, but if you wrap your core content in a main tag and an article tag, you are literally handing the search engine the answer key on a silver platter.
You really are.
You're explicitly telling the Google bot, hey, ignore the logo, ignore the sidebar links. This specific block of text is the actual valuable content you should be indexing for your search results.
And making life easier for search engines usually rewards you with better rankings. You're completely removing the friction to the algorithm.
Possum. And there was a third benefit too, right?
Yeah, the third major benefit brings it back to the humans. Readability and maintainability.
The future you problem.
Yes, we've all been there.
Yeah.
When you're working on a massive project and you have to open an HTML file that you wrote 6 months ago.
Or worse, that a completely different developer wrote.
Exactly. If it's div soup, you have to read every single line of code to figure out where the main content ends and the footer begins.
It's just a wall of text.
But seeing clear, color-coded header, main, and aside tags in your editor makes it infinitely easier to read, debug, and scale that code. It's self-documenting.
Okay, you've completely sold me on semantic tags. And honestly, most of these 7 core tags are incredibly self-explanatory.
Yeah, they're pretty straightforward.
Like, a footer obviously goes at the foot of the page. Nav is obviously for navigation. But the notes specifically call out one pair of tags as a massive stumbling block for learners.
Oh, I know exactly which ones you mean.
Yeah, article versus section.
This is the classic trap. Developers constantly get tripped up here because both of these tags are fundamentally used to do the same thing. They group related paragraphs, images, and headings together into a block.
Right. Looking at the definitions in the sources, both article and section just draw an invisible boundary around related content. Honestly, they seem completely interchangeable to me. If I have a block of text with a headline, how on earth do I know which one to use?
It is a subtle but vital distinction, and the documentation breaks it down with some really helpful quick tests. Let's tackle section first.
Okay.
A section is a thematic grouping of related content, but its scope is tied directly to the specific page it's currently sitting on. It exists to break a larger, complex page into digestible parts.
Oh, the analogy the source uses is think of chapters in a book.
That's a great way to frame it. A chapter makes sense inside the book, but if you rip chapter 4 out of a novel and hand it to someone on the street, they're going to be completely lost.
That makes sense.
So the quick test the source provides is to ask yourself, is this just one themed piece of a bigger puzzle?
Let's put that into a concrete example. Say I'm building a website for a local bakery, and I have a single long web page titled Our Baking Process.
Perfect. You might break that single long page down into 3 distinct areas, like an introduction, a section on sourcing ingredients, and a section on baking techniques.
Okay.
Each of those 3 areas should be wrapped in a section tag. They organize that specific larger page into meaningful thematic chunks. But if you took just the sourcing ingredients text and published it on a totally different website all by itself, it might lack context. It relies on the rest of the page.
Got it. It's a structural partition for the page you're currently on.
Ah.
But article operates under a totally different philosophy.
Very different. The article tag represents self-contained, independent content that could stand completely alone and still make 100% sense to the reader.
Okay.
Its purpose is to wrap content that is highly reusable or syndicatable.
So the quick test here is, could this piece of content be pulled out of this website entirely and published on its own?
Think of a syndicated comic strip in a newspaper or a post in an RSS feed. The classic examples of an article are individual blog posts, news stories, forum comments, or even a specific product card on an e-commerce site.
So going back to the bakery website, if they have a latest news page and it lists 3 different updates, say one about a new croissant flavor, one about holiday hours, and one about a staff member's birthday.
Yeah, each of those individual updates gets its own article tag.
Because you could take that croissant update, copy it, and paste it directly into an email newsletter or a Facebook post, and the reader would completely understand what they're reading without needing any other context.
Exactly. It is a completely self-contained story.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Mastering this one tricky distinction, like knowing exactly when a block of content is just a thematic piece of the local puzzle versus when it's a completely self-contained, syndicatable story, that is what elevates your code from amateur to professional.
Yeah, it proves you aren't just memorizing HTML vocabulary. You are actively analyzing the fundamental nature of the information you're structuring.
It's so much deeper than just making things look pretty.
You're thinking like an information architect.
Yeah.
But this raises a really crucial tension for the learner. Let's say you've done all this hard work. You meticulously drew your visual wireframe. You wrote your flawless semantic HTML document.
Oh.
You perfectly distinguished your sections from your articles. And then, the moment of truth. You double-click that HTML file to open it in your Chrome web browser.
The brutal reality check.
The source material actually has a specific warning dedicated to this exact moment. It's titled, "A Note on What This Will Look Like."
Because it's a shock.
Because right now, without any CSS, without any specific design or styling code, your beautifully semantic, perfectly structured page is going to render as a plain, unstyled, left-aligned vertical stack of black text and bright blue hyperlinks.
It's jarring. It looks like a completely broken website from 1993. The navigation you carefully wrapped in a nav tag isn't running horizontally across the top of the screen.
Yep.
The sidebar you put in a side tag isn't actually on the side. Every single element is just stacked aggressively on top of each other, pushed all the way to the left margin.
And the documentation explicitly reassures you that is expected behavior.
Yeah.
You did not make a mistake.
Yeah.
Today's job, the entire focus of this phase of development, is strictly about correct structural meaning, not visual appearance.
It's a feature, not a bug. If your page looks like a plain vertical stack of text, it means you've successfully stripped away the visual distractions and focused entirely on the raw meaning of the data.
Exactly.
The sources actually tease the next phase of the curriculum, which is all about CSS. And that is where the magic happens.
You take those exact same semantic tags, your header, your nav, your main, your side, and you apply CSS styling rules to them so they finally snap into place and match that beautiful sci-fi wireframe blueprint you drew at the very beginning.
So the HTML provides the bones. The CSS provides the skin, the clothing, and the makeup.
You fundamentally cannot have a beautiful, functioning website without a solid, meaningful foundation of bones underneath it.
So, synthesizing everything we've unpacked today, great web development is a 2-step foundational process.
Right.
First, you have to plan visually using wireframes. You map out the geographic zones of your content without getting bogged down in colors or fonts. And then you have to code meaningfully. You ditch the lazy, generic div soup, and you employ semantic tags that actively describe the content for screen readers, for Google spiders, and for the developers who will eventually inherit your code.
Yeah, and the notes actually leave us with some practical assignments to lock this all in.
Oh, that's right. The directives are to go wireframe your own homepage using a visual tool like draw.io. Then rebuild your public index.html file utilizing all 7 of those core semantic tags we discussed. And finally, take the Chapter 2 concepts quiz to test your retention.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what this material is really teaching us is that exceptional web development is an exercise in extreme intentionality. It's about rigorously deciding what your content means before you ever give yourself permission to decide how it looks.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder, something that builds directly on the mechanics we've explored today. We spent a lot of time discussing how semantic HTML helps automated bots like Google Spiders and accessibility tools like screen readers understand what is actually on a web page.
Yeah.
But think about the rapidly approaching future. As AI agents increasingly begin to browse the internet on our behalf, booking our flights, summarizing dense research papers, executing our grocery orders, they aren't going to be looking at the visual design.
An AI agent doesn't care about your pretty CSS drop shadows or your perfect color palette.
Exactly. They are going to rely entirely on this invisible semantic structure to navigate, parse, and extract data. So by using semantic HTML today, by cleanly separating our articles from our sections and explicitly defining our main content, are we actually building the physical infrastructure for the AI assistants of tomorrow?
Wow, yeah. It is wild to think that those humble, invisible text tags we type today are the literal road signs for the next generation of the internet.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the invisible architecture around you and keep exploring the hidden structures of the web.